The screaming alarms of the survey vessel Prometheus filled Tyler Cross's ears as he fought to maintain control over the plummeting ship. Red warning lights bathed the cockpit in hellish crimson while his instruments went crazy, displaying readings that made no sense. The magnetic storms of Valdris Prime had been stronger than predicted, and now his ship was paying the price. Tyler gritted his teeth and pulled hard on the manual controls, feeling the strain in his shoulders as he tried to level out the descent. The planet's surface rushed up to meet him through the cracked view screen, showing a landscape of towering crystal formations that gleamed like frozen lightning against purple-tinged skies. His military training kicked in automatically, calculating angles and impact zones even as sweat dripped into his eyes. The ship hit the first crystal spire with a grinding shriek of metal against stone. Tyler was thrown forward against his restraints as the Prometheus carved a destructive path through the forest of luminescent pillars. Each impact sent shockwaves through the hull, and he could hear systems failing one by one. The backup power flickered and died just as the ship finally came to rest in a crater of its own making. Surrounded by the shattered remains of what had been beautiful crystal trees, silence fell like a heavy blanket. Tyler hung in his harness for a moment, taking inventory of his body. His left shoulder throbbed where it had slammed into the console, and he could taste blood from where he had bitten his tongue, but nothing seemed broken. He released the harness and dropped to the tilted floor of the cockpit, immediately moving to assess the damage to his ship. The news was not good. The main power core was cracked, the communication array was completely destroyed, and the hull had been breached in at least 3 places. Tyler ran a hand through his dark hair and surveyed the wreckage with the calm efficiency that had kept him alive through 2 military tours and countless civilian rescue missions. He was stranded, but he was alive, and that meant he had options. Tyler gathered what supplies he could from the emergency stores. His survival pack contained basic medical supplies, water purification tablets, emergency rations for 5 days, and a plasma pistol with 2 spare power cells. Not much to work with on an unknown planet, but he had made do with less before. He sealed the breaches as best he could with emergency patches, creating a crude shelter from the worst of the alien elements. As the first of Valdris Prime's 3 moons rose over the crystal forest, Tyler stepped outside to survey his surroundings. The air was breathable, but thin, with an electric taste that made his skin tingle. The crystal formations around him hummed with a low frequency that seemed to resonate in his bones, and strange bioluminescent plants cast shifting patterns of blue and green light across the ground. He was not alone. Tyler sensed her presence before he saw her, some primitive instinct making the hair on his neck stand up. He turned slowly, his hand moving to the plasma pistol at his hip, and found himself staring into a pair of golden eyes that seemed to glow with their own inner fire. She emerged from behind a cluster of smaller crystals like a shadow-given form. Her body was humanoid but distinctly alien, covered in sleek fur that shifted from deep brown to golden highlights in the moonlight. She moved with a predator's grace, every step calculated and silent. Her face was angular and beautiful, with high cheekbones and a small nose. But her mouth revealed sharp canine teeth when she spoke. "You do not belong here, Skywalker," she said. Her voice a low purr with an accent that made the common trade language sound exotic and dangerous. "This is Ashanti territory. The crystal groves are sacred." Tyler kept his hands visible but ready, reading the tension in her posture. She was armed with what looked like a curved blade at her hip and wore form-fitting leather that left little to the imagination. Her athletic build spoke of a lifetime of training in combat, and the way she moved suggested she could cross the distance between them faster than he could draw his weapon. "I did not choose to land here," Tyler said carefully, pitching his voice to sound non-threatening. "My ship was damaged by the magnetic storms. I mean, no disrespect to your people or your sacred places." She tilted her head slightly, studying him with those predatory eyes. Her ears, Tyler noticed, were pointed and mobile, constantly twitching to track sounds he could not hear. When she moved closer, he caught her scent on the alien breeze, something wild and clean like mountain air. "After a storm, you speak truth," she said finally, though her hand remained near her weapon. "But truth does not change law." Outsiders who enter the sacred groves must be brought before the circle of elders. Most do not survive the journey. Tyler felt a chill. That had nothing to do with the alien night air. And if I refuse to come with you? Smile played at the corners of her mouth, revealing those sharp teeth again. Then you will not survive this night. The crystal groves do not welcome strangers kindly, and there are hunters who track trespassers for sport. I am Kestra of the Night Wind clan, guardian of the eastern approaches. I offer you protection, but it comes with a price. Tyler weighed his options quickly. He could try to run, but she obviously knew this terrain far better than he did. He could fight, but something told him that would be a very short and very painful mistake. Or he could trust this dangerous, beautiful alien who claimed to offer protection. What kind of price? He asked. Khan moved closer. Close enough that he could see the intricate patterns of darker fur that marked her arms and throat like living tattoos. Close enough to smell the wild musk of her scent and see the predatory intelligence in her golden eyes. You will do exactly as I say when I say it, without question or hesitation, she said, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. You will not touch the crystals. You will not stray from the path I choose. And you will not look upon me with those hungry human eyes for longer than necessary. Tyler felt heat rising in his cheeks. Hungry eyes. Do not think I do not notice, Kestra said, and now there was definite amusement in her voice. Your kind are not subtle in your desires. But if you stare too long, if you let your thoughts wander where they should not go, I will pounce. And you may not survive what comes after. The threat should have been frightening, but Tyler found himself fighting back a grin. There was something about this fierce alien woman that called to. Something primal in his own nature. She was dangerous, yes, but she was also magnificent. And the challenge in her voice made his pulse quicken in ways that had nothing to do with fear. That's understood, he said, meeting her gaze steadily. Lead the way, Kestra of the Night Wind clan. She studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Gather your essential supplies only. We travel light and fast. The night hunters will have detected your ship's crash by now, and they will not be as merciful as I. Tyler quickly retrieved his survival pack and sealed the ship's emergency beacon. If a rescue mission came looking for him, they would find the Prometheus. But by then he hoped to be somewhere safer than this exposed crash site. Kestra led him away from the wreckage with fluid. Silent steps that seemed to barely disturb the crystalline ground. Tyler did his best to match her pace and stealth, though he felt clumsy and loud compared to her natural grace. She moved through the crystal forest like she was part of it, finding paths that seemed invisible to his human eyes as they traveled. Deeper into the alien wilderness, Tyler found himself stealing glances at his guide, despite her warnings. The way she moved was hypnotic, all controlled power and predatory elegance. Her fur caught the light from the glowing plants in constantly shifting patterns. And he found himself wondering what it would feel like under his fingers. Kestra suddenly stopped and turned, catching him in the act of staring. Her golden eyes narrowed dangerously. I warned you about looking too long, human, she said, her voice a low growl that sent shivers down Tyler's spine. Do you think my words mean nothing? Tyler felt his heart rate spike, but he forced himself to meet her gaze without flinching. I think you are the most beautiful and dangerous thing I have ever seen, he said honestly, and I think looking at you is probably worth whatever punishment you have in mind. For a moment, Kestra seemed taken aback by his directness. Then her eyes darkened with something that might have been desire or might have been the promise of violence. Tyler found he was not entirely sure which option excited him more. Careful, Skywalker, she whispered, moving close enough that her breath warmed his ear. You have no idea what you are playing with. But as she pulled away and resumed leading him through the crystal forest, Tyler caught something in her scent that had not been there before, something warm and musky that made his pulse race even faster. Perhaps he was not the only one fighting forbidden attraction. The night was young, and the journey to safety would be long and dangerous. But as Tyler followed Kestra deeper into the alien wilderness, he began to suspect that the greatest danger he faced might not come from the planet's hostile environment or its predatory inhabitants. It might come from the magnificent, fierce. Woman leading him through the darkness, and the fire she was kindling in his very human heart. The first sign of trouble came with the howling that echoed through the crystal forest just before dawn. Kestra froze mid-step, her pointed ears swiveling to catch sounds that Tyler's human hearing could not detect. Her tail, which he had noticed, flicked with subtle expressions of mood throughout their night journey, now lashed with obvious agitation. "Night hunters," she whispered, crouching low behind a cluster of singing crystals. "They have found your scent trail despite my efforts to mask it." Tyler dropped beside her, close enough to feel the heat radiating from her fur-covered skin. The proximity sent an unwelcome jolt of attraction through him, but he forced himself to focus on their survival situation. How many? Kestra's nostrils flared as she tested the air. 3, maybe 4. They move in pack formation, using crystal resonance to communicate across distances. We cannot outrun them in open ground. Tyler assessed their surroundings with tactical precision. Crystal forest offered plenty of cover, but also limited mobility. The glowing formations created shadows and hiding spots, but their musical humming would mask approaching footsteps until it was too late. He pulled out his plasma pistol and checked the charge level. "I can fight," he said simply. Kestra's golden eyes fixed on his weapon, then traveled up to his face with an expression that might have been respect or concern. "Your skyfire weapon may wound them, but night hunters are bred for killing. Their skin is thick, their reflexes faster than yours, and they feel no pain until they are nearly dead." Another howl split the pre-dawn air, closer this time and answered by 2 others from different directions. Tyler felt the familiar calm that always settled over him in combat situations. Fear was useful for keeping you alive, but panic would get you killed. "Then we don't fight them on their terms," he said, studying the crystal formations around them. "These crystals respond to vibration, right? They sing when the wind hits them?" Kestra nodded slowly, beginning to understand his thinking. The resonance frequencies can be quite powerful when properly amplified. Tyler smiled grimly as a plan began to form. "Then let's give them something to really howl about," working quickly and quietly. Tyler began placing small charges from his emergency kit at the base of several large crystal spires. The explosive devices were designed for clearing debris or emergency excavation, but properly positioned, they could bring down enough crystal mass to create a devastating avalanche of sharp. Singing Stone.Kestra watched him work with growing admiration. "You think like a hunter," she said softly. "Most humans rely on brute force and superior firepower. Learned early that brains beat brawn every time," Tyler replied, positioning the final charge. "Besides, this is your territory. Just a guest who doesn't want to overstay his welcome." The first night hunter appeared between the crystal spires like a nightmare-given form. It stood nearly 8 feet tall on powerful digitigrade legs, its body covered in plates of natural armor that gleamed dully in the crystal light. Its elongated skull housed multiple rows of teeth, and its arms ended in claws that could tear through metal. When it opened its mouth to taste the air, Tyler could see that its tongue was forked like a serpent's. 2 more hunters emerged from different angles, moving with coordinated precision that spoke of countless successful hunts. They communicated through subsonic growls that made the crystals around them vibrate ominously. "Now would be good," Kestra murmured, pressing close against Tyler's side. Tyler triggered the detonator. The explosion was not particularly loud by human standards. The effect on the crystal forest was spectacular. The charged formations began to resonate at increasing frequencies, their harmonic vibrations building and amplifying until the very air seemed to sing with deadly intensity. The night hunters' superior hearing, which gave them such an advantage in normal circumstances, now became a liability as the overwhelming sonic assault drove them to their knees. Crystal spires began to crack and topple, creating a cascade of falling stone and singing shards that filled the air with deadly projectiles. Tyler grabbed Kestra's hand and ran, pulling her away from the avalanche zone as the forest transformed into a glittering, musical death trap behind them. They didn't stop running until the sounds of destruction faded to distant whispers. When they finally paused to catch their breath, Kestra turned to look at Tyler with an expression he couldn't quite read. "That was either brilliant or completely insane," she said. "I prefer to think of it as creatively adaptive," Tyler replied. Grinning despite their exhaustion, Kestra studied his face for a long moment, then did something unexpected. She reached out and traced the line of his jaw with one clawed finger, her touch surprisingly gentle. "You are not like other Skywalkers," she said quietly. "There is something different about you." Tyler felt his breath catch at her touch. "Different? How?" "You do not try to dominate or control," Kestra said, her golden eyes searching his. "You adapt. You learn. You respect the balance of things." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibility and danger. Tyler was acutely aware of her alien beauty. The way her fur caught the early morning light, the predatory grace of her movements. He wanted to touch her, to explore the mysteries of her body and her culture, but he also sensed that one wrong move could shatter whatever trust they had built. "Kestra," he began, but she stepped back before he could continue. "We must keep moving," she said, though her voice carried a note of regret. The night hunters were not the only threat in these lands. They traveled through the day, following game trails that wound between increasingly ancient crystal formations. Tyler noticed that the crystals in this region were different from those near his crash site. These were darker, more complex in their structure, and they hummed with frequencies that seemed to resonate in his bones. As the day progressed, Tyler found himself learning more about his enigmatic guide. Kestra moved through the landscape with an intimacy that spoke of childhood, exploration, and lifelong familiarity. She knew which plants were safe to eat, which water sources were clean, and where to find shelter from the strange weather patterns that swept across Valdris Prime. But more than her knowledge, Tyler was drawn to her strength. Kestra was a warrior, born and bred, but she was also intelligent, curious, possessed of a dry sense of humor that surfaced when she thought he wasn't paying attention. When they stopped to rest beside a pool of clear water, Tyler watched her perform what looked like a ritual cleansing, her movements graceful and meditative. "May I ask about your people?" Tyler said carefully. "I don't want to give offense." Kestra glanced at him while braiding a section of her longer fur. "What would you know?" "Everything," Tyler said honestly. "Your customs, your beliefs, what makes you laugh, what makes you angry. I've never met anyone like you." Something flickered in Kestra's eyes at his words. "The Ashanti are an old people," she said slowly. "We have guarded the sacred places for more generations than the stars can count. We believe in balance, in the harmony between hunter and hunted, predator and prey, and outsiders upset that balance." "Not all outsiders," Kestra said, her gaze meeting his. "But most who come here seek only to take. They see our crystals as resources to be harvested, our lands as territory to be claimed. They do not understand that some things are meant to remain untouched." Tyler nodded thoughtfully. "But you helped me anyway." "You were different," Kestra said again, and this time there was something almost vulnerable in her voice. "When you look at the crystals, you see beauty, not profit. When you look at me," she trailed off, but Tyler knew what she meant. When he looked at her, he saw a woman, fierce and beautiful and fascinating. Not an exotic conquest or a primitive to be civilized. "When I look at you," Tyler said softly, "I see someone I want to know better. Someone I want to protect, even though you could probably kill me with your bare hands." Kestra laughed, a sound like silver bells in the wind. "I could definitely kill you with my bare hands? That's what makes it interesting," Tyler replied with a grin. Their moment of levity was interrupted by the sound of approaching engines. Tyler looked up to see aircraft on the horizon, sleek vessels that moved too smoothly to be natural. Kestra hissed under her breath and pulled him toward a cluster of larger crystals. "Bounty hunters," she said grimly. "They must have detected the explosion from this morning and come to investigate." Tyler watched the ships circle in the distance, their sensors no doubt scanning for signs of life. "Looking for the night hunters?" "Looking for whatever killed the night hunters," Kestra corrected. "There will be a substantial reward for whoever can bring down the creature responsible." Tyler felt a chill as he realized the implications. "They think I'm some kind of monster. To them, Any human who can survive on Valdra's prime and kill trained hunters is either extremely dangerous or extremely valuable, Kestra said. Either way, they will not stop hunting until they find you. The aircraft began moving in their direction. Following what was probably the trail of destruction from the crystal avalanche, Tyler checked his plasma pistol again, knowing it would be useless against military-grade spacecraft. There's a place, Kestra said suddenly, making a decision that seemed to surprise even her. Ancient ruins deeper in the sacred lands. The crystals there will hide us from their sensors, but what? Kestra's golden eyes met his, and Tyler saw fear there for the first time since they had met. If my people discover I have brought an outsider to the heart of songs, the penalty is death for both of us. Tyler looked at the approaching aircraft, then back at Kestra's worried face. The choice was stark. Risk certain capture by the bounty hunters, or trust this magnificent alien woman with both their lives. Then we'd better not get caught, Tyler said. Kestra stared at him for a moment, then smiled with genuine warmth, for the first time since they had met. You are either the bravest human I have ever encountered, or the most foolish. Probably both, Tyler admitted, as they began moving deeper into the forbidden territories of Valdra's prime. Tyler found himself wondering if he was making the biggest mistake of his life, or the best decision he had ever made. But with Kestra leading him toward ancient secrets and deadly beauty, he discovered he no longer cared about the difference. The heart of songs was unlike anything Tyler had ever imagined. Deep within the sacred territories of the Ashanti, ancient crystal formations rose like frozen music, their surfaces carved with symbols that seemed to shift and dance in the ethereal light. The air itself hummed with harmonics so complex and beautiful that Tyler felt tears prick his eyes without understanding why. Kestra moved through the sacred space with reverent steps, her earlier confidence replaced by something approaching. My people believe this place holds the memories of the first singers, she whispered. Those who taught the crystals their songs in the time before time. Lowed her lead, keeping his voice low, out of respect for the sacred atmosphere. It's magnificent. I can see why your people guard it so fiercely. They had been traveling for 2 days through increasingly dangerous terrain, always one step ahead of the bounty hunters whose aircraft continued to sweep the area. The deeper they went into Ashanti territory, the more Tyler understood why outsiders rarely survived the journey. This was not just a landscape. It was a living entity that tested every intruder with deadly purpose. But it was also during those 2 days that Tyler and Kestra had grown closer in ways that transcended mere survival. Partnership. Shared dangers had forged trust, and trust had blossomed into something neither of them had expected when they first met in the Crystal Forest. Now, in the heart of her people's most sacred place, Kestra turned to face Tyler with an expression that mixed wonder with deep conflict. There is something you must know, she said, her golden eyes troubled. The reason I was in the Crystal Forest when your ship crashed. The reason I chose to help you instead of following our laws. Tyler sensed the importance of her words and gave her his complete attention. Tell me. Kestra moved to one of the carved crystal pillars, running her clawed fingers over symbols that glowed faintly at her touch. Our seers had dreams of a skywalker who would come to the sacred groves. They said he would bring change, perhaps destruction, perhaps hope. The circle of elders sent me to watch for this dreamer's arrival. A chill ran down Tyler's spine. You knew I was coming? Yeah, you specifically, Kestra said, still not meeting his eyes. Got it. But someone like you. The dreams spoke of a human who would challenge our understanding of the balance between species, who would force us to choose between ancient traditions and new possibilities. Tyler felt pieces of a larger puzzle clicking into place. That's why you saved me, not out of kindness, but because your people wanted to study me. At first, yes, Kestra admitted, and Tyler heard genuine pain in her voice, but that changed almost immediately. The moment I saw you standing beside your broken ship, so determined to survive, so respectful of things you did not understand, I knew I could not simply deliver you to the circle like some trophy to be examined. She finally turned to face him, and Tyler saw tears glistening in her golden eyes. I chose you over my duty to my people. I chose my heart over my honor. Now we are both lost." Tyler crossed the space between them in 3 quick strides, ignoring the sacred nature of their surroundings in favor of the more immediate sacredness of the woman before him. He cupped her face in his hands, feeling the soft texture of her fur against his palms. "We're not lost," he said firmly. "We're exactly where we need to be." Kestra leaned into his touch, her eyes closing briefly. "You do not understand? When the Circle discovers what I have done, they will demand both our lives. There is no forgiveness for betraying the sacred trust." "Then we don't get caught," Tyler said simply. "We find another way." "There is no other way," Kestra said desperately. "This is not a problem you can solve with human ingenuity and explosives. This is about honor, tradition, the very foundation of who my people are." Tyler studied her face, reading the depths of her conflict. This magnificent, fierce woman had risked everything for him, had chosen love over duty in a way that went against everything she had been taught. The weight of her sacrifice was both humbling and terrifying. "Then we changed the foundation," Tyler said, before Kestra could respond. The sound of approaching engines filled the sacred chamber. The bounty hunters had found them, their aircraft descending toward the Heart of Songs with weapons charging. But worse than the immediate threat was what Tyler saw emerging from the far passages of the chamber: Ashanti warriors in ceremonial armor, led by an elderly female whose bearing spoke of absolute authority. Elder Nyota. Kestra breathed, and Tyler heard despair in her voice. The confrontation that followed was unlike anything from Tyler's military experience. The Ashanti warriors surrounded them with weapons drawn, but they moved with ceremonial precision rather than tactical efficiency. This was not a battle. It was a judgment. Elder Nyota approached with measured steps, her ancient eyes taking in every detail of the scene. When she spoke, her voice carried the weight of centuries of tradition. "Kestra, of the Night Wind clan," she said formally, "you stand accused of bringing forbidden knowledge to sacred ground, of violating the ancient compact between the Ashanti and the Skywalkers, and of choosing personal desire over the sacred duty entrusted to you by the Circle of Elders." Kestra straightened, her warrior's pride reasserting itself even in the face of certain death. "I accept responsibility for my actions, Elder Nyota, but I do not regret them. And you, Skywalker," Elder Nyota's piercing gaze turned to Tyler. "You have seen what no outsider should see, learned what no human should know. By ancient law, this knowledge dies with you." Tyler felt the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He could try to fight, but he was vastly outnumbered and in the heart of enemy territory. He could try to run, but there was nowhere to go. Or he could do what he did best: adapt to an impossible situation and find a solution no one else had considered. "Elder Nyota," Tyler said, stepping forward with the confidence that had carried him through countless diplomatic missions during his military service, "I request the right to speak before judgment is passed." The elderly Ashanti leader's eyebrows rose slightly. "You know our customs? Kestra taught me," Tyler said simply. "She has shown me the beauty and wisdom of your people, the sacred balance you protect. I understand why my presence here is seen as a violation of that balance, yet you would speak in your own defense." Tyler shook his head. "I would speak in defense of change. In defense of the possibility that balance does not always mean separation, that harmony can exist between species without the need for absolute boundaries." A murmur ran through the assembled warriors. Elder Nyota held up a hand for silence. "Continue," she said. Tyler took a deep breath, knowing that his next words would determine not just his fate, but Kestra's as well. "Your seers dreamed of a Skywalker who would bring change. Perhaps that change is not meant to be feared but embraced. Perhaps the balance you seek to protect can be strengthened rather than threatened by contact between our peoples. And what would you offer as proof of this possibility?" Elder Nyota asked. Tyler turned to look at Kestra, seeing her watching him with a mixture of hope and terror. Then he turned back to the elder and made the most important decision of his life. "I offer myself," Tyler said, "not as a conqueror or an explorer, but as a student. Let me learn your ways, contribute what skills I have to your people's welfare, and prove that humans and Ashanti can work together without destroying what makes each culture unique." The silence that followed was broken by the approaching roar of the bounty hunter's aircraft. Elder Nyota's expression hardened as she realized the implications. "It seems your fellow humans have different ideas about cooperation," she said coldly. Tyler pulled out his plasma pistol and checked the charge. "Those aren't my people, Elder. They're criminals who see profit in conflict. Let me help you defend this sacred place and judge my worth by my actions rather than my species." What happened next would be remembered in Ashanti songs for generations to come. Tyler Cross, the human Skywalker, stood with the warriors of the Nightwind clan and fought to defend the heart of songs against his own kind. His tactical knowledge, combined with Ashanti, courage, and the natural defenses of the crystal formations, turned what should have been a massacre into a rout. When the last bounty hunter ship fled into the purple skies of Valdris Prime, found himself standing among warriors who no longer looked at him as an outsider, Elder Nyota approached him with something that might have been respect. "You have proven your words with blood and fire," she said. "But the question remains, what future do you envision for yourself among the Ashanti?" Tyler looked at Kestra, seeing the love and hope shining in her golden eyes. "I envision learning everything she can teach me about being worthy of her trust. I envision finding ways to use my knowledge to help protect what you hold sacred. And, if you'll have me, I envision a life spent proving that love can bridge any gap between worlds." Elder Nyota studied them both for a long moment, then smiled for the first time since arriving at the heart of songs. "The seers spoke truly," she said. "Change has indeed come to the Ashanti. Perhaps it is time we embraced it." 3 months later, Tyler Cross stood in the crystal gardens of the Nightwind clan compound, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of lavender and gold. His human clothes had been replaced with Ashanti leather and fur. His plasma pistol supplemented with traditional weapons he was still learning to use properly. Kestra approached from behind, moving with the same predatory grace that had captivated him from their first meeting. But now her movements held a different quality, the satisfied confidence of a woman who had chosen love and found it returned in full measure. "The circle has approved our bonding ceremony," she said, sliding her arms around his waist from behind. "Elder Nyota says it will be the first union between human and Ashanti in recorded history." Tyler leaned back against her warmth, marveling at how perfectly they fit together despite the differences in their species.
"Think we'll survive making history?"
Kestra's laugh was rich with promise. "Human, after everything we've been through. Together, I think we can survive anything the universe throws at us." As the stars began to appear in the alien sky above Valdris Prime, Tyler Cross reflected on the chain of events that had brought him to this moment. A crash landing that should have meant death had instead led him to love. A first contact that should have ended in conflict had become the foundation for a new kind of understanding between species. In the end, it was not human technology or superior firepower that had won the day. It was something far more powerful and far more fragile: the courage to trust, to adapt, and to choose love over fear when the universe demanded a choice. Kestra was right. Together, they could survive anything. After all, they were human and Ashanti. Predator and protector, two hearts united across the vast divide between worlds. And in a universe full of wonders and terrors, that kind of love was the most powerful force of all.